Welcome to Zeroed. If you watched the previous video titled The Purpose, then you would be knowing a bit more about the purpose behind this initiative. Well, let's call today's conversation as reality check. It quite so often happens that my mind is busy with three types of thoughts. One is thoughts which is related to the day-to-day tasks and errands. What the breakfast I'm going to make in the morning, how much time it's going to take me to travel to the office. So that's one part of my mind. The other part of my mind is filled with thoughts related to the most obvious, the stress. Stress related to things which are not going as planned. You're expecting something to happen and it doesn't happen. There's a delay in something, all those things. Finally, the third part of my brain is the most unreal part of the mind, which is busy thinking that it's a beautiful day, things are all well, and tomorrow is going to be a beautiful day too. In between these three types of thoughts, I'm completely cut off from reality. Reality of how things are going to end. Where am I headed? Where am I today? Right? That's when I just go and wash my face with some ice cold water, take a pen and paper and sit down in front of my desk and write down the question. Where am I at this moment and where am I headed? And then I start my homework of trying to read about things, and whenever I try to go towards an answer for a question, I get led into another answer, because once I answer the primary question, there is obviously going to be a part of that answer which is unknown to me or it's unclear. So then I ask the second question, oh, what is this? And then that leads me to another answer. This is more like how you basically strain the hay from the rice or wheat using a chani, as we say, or a strainer. So that's what I end up doing, and I wanted to converse about this with you all. So the primary question which I started this reality check with was, what made me think of moving to Canada? Why did I want to experience living here? The answer was pretty simple. It was for lifestyle and livelihood. Let's talk about the livelihood first. Livelihood is basically, as we say famously in the Hindi movies, the roti, kapda, makan, right? The food, the essential clothings, and the shelter. So those are the basic needs to live. And for me, that was one of the factors, because I was thinking probably moving into Canada is going to give me the opportunity to live the way I dream to live, with the right kind of roti, kapda, makan. On the other side, it was about the lifestyle. The lifestyle includes things like my social lifestyle, how I spend time personally outside my work, the restaurants I go, the kind of places I visit, the vacations I take, the car I own. So those are things related to lifestyle. Those are basically the wants. The difference between needs and wants is lifestyle and livelihood. In my case, personally, it was the 80-20 case, where for me 80% of the things which I wanted was related to livelihood and 20% of the things were related to lifestyle. It can differ from people to people, but that was my case. So now the question comes, like, whether it's possible to live the kind of lifestyle and livelihood which I wanted to, or where am I right now and where am I headed. Then that gives me answer that to get those lifestyle and livelihood, I need to have the right kind of earnings. And that takes me to the other question, is it possible to make that earnings? So to make that earnings, I need to have the right kind of career trajectory where I'm at a particular position where I can make that particular earning. Either it can be professionally by upskilling or maybe getting promoted or securing a job at that level, but it all comes down to the career trajectory. So that's where we are at when we go through this process of reality check. Is it at the moment possible to achieve the right career goal? When we talk about career or employment, we all would understand and agree that it is very closely associated to the economic condition of a country, because the economy of the country is more like the blood or the air we breathe. Like, unless the economy is running well, all parts of the body wouldn't function quite well, right? So let's ask that question now. Is Canada at present economically good? This led to me an article dated November 6th of 2023, which spoke about an idea that Canada is into a technical recession. We all know in simple terms what a recession means. A recession is a point of time when the country's economy is not doing well. Just like we try to compare it to a human being, how if the flow of oxygen or the circulation of blood is less in a human body, we are considered to be unhealthy or unwell. The same way, if there isn't a sufficient flow of cash within the country, that is the economical condition. That means the country's economy isn't doing well. A technical recession is basically a point where for 2 consecutive quarters, that is 6 months, the GDP has been dropping downwards. Let's try to simplify the recession part a bit. Recession is a point of time when the buying power of not just you and me, but everyone goes down. Let's take an example. When it comes to us, it's basically the buying power, like we might be thinking twice before purchasing our groceries, like what type of groceries we need to buy, how much quantity we need to buy, or if there is anything like lifestyle centric purchases, like whether should I get a spare set of shoes now or should I keep it for later. The same way, under the recession, it's not just about normal people like you and me, but it's also about businesses. Businesses start struggling to make their purchases. Like, say if I'm a retail food outlet and I make barbecue, and there's a particular kind of chicken I cater, so I might think twice before getting that sourced, because that particular chicken might be costing me a bit more. So that's where the recession is evident. We all remember the pandemic period and how it affected lives and businesses around. There were layoffs, businesses got shut, salaries were reduced, and things happened much worse. The situation in Canada was no different. The government had taken up initiatives to support the citizens and also businesses. It was giving loan waivers, it was giving funds for people who had been laid off, and supporting in all the means possible. The temporary support obviously had to come to an end over the period of time when the pandemic was coming to an end. So that is when we need to look at another stat, which is called inflation. Inflation is basically, in simple terms, where the cost of products go up. Like if a pound of chicken was costing X dollars and it gets increased by $1 or 50 cents, That's basically inflation, or even more. If it gets doubled, even in that case, it's called inflation. So, why does this inflation happen? That's the next question. This is for you to understand that inflation happens when the demand for the product increases or the supply of the product has reduced. So there are two relatable reasons. So now consider one way that people have the urge of spending more because they've all been sitting at home after the pandemic and they are all out. They are coming out to the retail shops after a long gap and they have a lot of credit saved. So they want to swipe left hand corner and enjoy their life. So your spending power has increased, so you want to buy more. Now because of this, when the retailers or businesses start understanding, oh, there are people ready to buy things, let's increase the price. So they start increasing the price of the goods they sell. There is another possibility where during the pandemic there was a big blockade of logistics, right? The cargo ships were stuck, everything was paused, so there was no sufficient goods reaching the market. That increases the demand for a product because the supply is less. That's another reason when the product prices go up. Invariably, of both the reasons, the price of goods go up. That's what inflation is. And as a country's standard, the country's government always tries to keep the inflation in control to keep the economy stable. So they try to control it within 2 to 3%. When it comes to Canada, when you look at the stats, it is very clearly visible that the inflation in Canada kept going up and touched 4% at one point of time. And in order to control this inflation, the government took steps. The steps which government took was to basically stabilize the economy, and that happened by increasing the interest rates. So the Bank of Canada, which is like for the analogy purpose, like the RBI of India, increased the interest rates. So if you look at the charts of interest rates over the last 10 years, the interest rates were as low as 1% or 1.5%, but they kept getting hiked multi-folds so that people and businesses stop spending more. So the moment the interest rate goes up for any normal person who has a mortgage on house, who has a car EMI running, who has other credit card bills running, will keep himself aware that he needs to spend less because he's paying more interest at the moment. The same thing applies to businesses. The businesses who are paying loans for their businesses have taken loans, or they have bought goods from a supplier and they are supposed to pay them through means of credits. So the interest rate will basically curb their spending or control their spending. By doing this, the government is trying to reduce or control the inflation rate. So we have understood that there was a slow growth in the GDP. The country was not growing at the speed for 2 consecutive quarters. So they were into technical recession. There was a push upwards in the inflation, that's goods prices went up. The government started increasing the interest rates, so people started spending less. That's where we are headed. So how does it matter? It matters because businesses, employers were becoming aware of the cash crunch. So on the back of the mind, they know that there is a possibility of heading straight into a full-blown recession. So they are already trying to control their expenses. That is where we see layoffs happening across the country and also change in their hiring plans. The change in hiring plans would be like reducing the number of manpower or reducing the pay scales or even trying to automate things. So these are ways how employers or businesses are trying to be prepared for the worst. So that is where we are standing at the moment. So that leads to the question, what is the state of employment? As per the latest statistics of unemployment rate in Canada, there is a consecutive growth in the unemployment percentage and it's heading towards 7% as per a report published by Desjardins, which is one of the leading insurance companies in Canada. When we look closer at the unemployment statistics, it is to be noted that nearly 50% of the growth in unemployment in the last year has been due to students and new graduates and newcomers. Amidst this situation, there is another data point which is unignorable from the employer's side of things. This is from a report called the Harris Poll, which is a survey research company. And this report says that the positions which were open were not filled. Majority of the positions were not filled by employers because of lack of required skills. 71% of employers felt that they didn't hire or they didn't close a position because the applicants didn't have the required skills. 36% of the employers felt that the applicants didn't have the relevant experience. This brings us to the reality that it is challenging, very challenging to aspire for the right career prospect at this current economic condition. Beyond that, it makes it even more difficult because of the need from the employer's end for the right skill and experience match, and also the critical factor, the unwritten factor of the Canadian experience. This is where I was led into when it came to the reality check. It put me to a point where I started thinking that what next? And was it a right decision to consider Canada? And how am I going to look for solution to this particular challenge? I did mention to you all about one part of my brain which is unrealistically positive and thinks that today is a good day and tomorrow is going to be a better day. So in a second part of this video, I would like to share things which look positive to me, but definitely unreal. Till then, thank you for watching this video. Watch out for the next video. Thank you so much.